Hey there, gorgeous, and welcome to a reflection on Madoka Magica. A little tea and cake fest you might have heard of where absolutely nothing bad happens, or so I've been told. Now, to be clear, this is a review of the series proper, not the movies, and not Rebellion. The original series was released in January of 2011 by Studio Shaft and directed by Akiyuki Shimbo. One of the first things you'll often hear associated with Madoka Magica is that it's a subversion of the Mahou Shoujo genre, which is understandable as this is one of the show's selling points and what primarily made Madoka Magica stand out to its Sailor Moon relative and other cousins. In fact, it was this advertisement as dark and edgy and not like other magical girl shows from its fans and some reviewers that actually got me interested in watching it. However, I'm not going to evaluate the anime as a dark version or subversion of any genre for three reasons. One, because the series writer Gen Urobuchi, or the Urobutcher, depending on your perspective, openly stated that this was not his intention. Two, the series being a subversion of something doesn't make it good. And also, since I haven't ever shown interest in the magical girl genre, or watched any magical girl shows before this one, I have neither the ability nor the desire to examine the series in any other way but standing on its own, and not in comparison to the genre it apparently departs from. As I pointed out in my previous reviews, my ability to like an anime generally depends on my ability to like most or at least enough of the characters. And while this isn't any less true with this series, the story and setting are unique aspects that significantly factor into my enjoyment of the show. This is significantly in contrast to some slice of life that I enjoy, where much of the appeal comes from just watching the characters that I like interact against a setting, backdrop, and story that is less important to me. With Madoka Magica, it's all about the story arc. The characters are defined by the story arc, not the other way around. And in this, Madoka Magica certainly does shine, with three of the girls undergoing significant growth of character as their climax and end wrap up to make up some truly epic moments. So let's touch on the characters. This is Madoka. She's kind, content, and indecisive, but also very thoughtful. Sayaka is brash, impetuous, and idealistic. Homura gives vague exposition, and Kyoko is a bitch.
Listen, chick, it's gotta eat 4 or 5 people before it turns into a witch. Then, when you kill it, you're sure to get a grief seed out of the deal. You don't want to kill the goose before it lays the golden eggs, rookie.
And there's Kyubei, a lovable, wise, and benevolent sensei who does only his best to look after the girls he's entrusted with and nothing else. All the characters undergo some level of exploration as the series progresses, which ties into the interesting dynamics between the magical girls. Homura acts as a guardian to Madoka in the same way Kyoko comes to care for Sayaka. The relationship between these two was especially memorable to me because of how subtle it was. And Kyoko's final battle was one of the most desperate acts of futility and one of the most emotional scenes I've witnessed in anime. Even Mami becomes a surprisingly developed character considering the little screen time she's given. The series itself is one of the best examples I've seen of sad and also tragic arcs in storytelling. It doesn't arbitrarily try to jerk tears out of the viewer like, here's a character you loved, aw, it died, aw. Every death and tragedy that occurs happens for a reason that is consistent with the series' established logic. For example, the biggest transformation at the end would have been an ass pull in any other series if its possibility had not been built up throughout the prior episodes. And while I never got teary-eyed while watching, the story arcs are very memorable to me because they are conceptually sad, tragic, and impactful. The series doesn't try to be dark for the sake of drawing attention to its darkness. In fact, pretty much all of the could-be gruesome scenes are handled in a rather PG manner. The edge of the series really does stem from the intriguing concepts themselves, and this, coupled with generally adequate to phenomenal execution, is the reason this show stuck with me and many others as much as it did. Where the series really shines in tugging at the heartstrings is actually in aspects other than the character expository scenes, the battles, the music, and witch labyrinths, which, when combined, made for some of the most epic and tense scenes that help define this series. This does not mean that the execution is always perfect, however, and, at least with the English dub, a lot of the exposition-heavy, sad moments fell flat for me, partly because I'm a Croyless stone with no soul, but also because the execution could have been done better, in my opinion. The two biggest examples of this were Sayaka's dilemma with her crippled boyfriend-ish something, and most of Homura's backstory with their various timelines and attempts to save Madoka. Both scenarios weren't executed badly by any means, but I felt better presentation could have made these conflicts feel much more impactful and perhaps even get a tear or two out of me. The scenes where mommy panics, for instance, is an example of a little too much exposition, I think. In addition, there are a few conceptual hiccups that didn't quite make a whole lot of sense to me, or at least felt incomplete. Sayaka's whole spiel on being a zombie, for example.
I'm already dead! I'm a zombie! I can't ask him to hold me if I'm like this! I can't ever ask him to kiss me!
Well, unless there are some underlying issues you haven't explained, no, you're still perfectly capable of forming a romantic relationship, and Homura's vague attitude toward everyone doesn't make a whole lot of sense. All it would have taken was 4 words from this cryptic little cunt, and the timeline would have been radically different. And on that note, how the hell do none of the other magical girls know that they'll eventually become grief seeds? Shaft-Tilt over here certainly wasn't the first one. Did the other girls just never notice when one of their colleagues went missing and a new witch with similar taste in art and cheesecake start ravaging the city? It makes sense for Madoka and Sayaka to be in the dark about it, but how the hell does Mami and Kyoko not know about this stuff?
What's up with Sayaka Miki? What kind of trouble do you think that fuzzball was talking about?
Despite my perceived problems with some aspects of the plot, the thing I appreciated the most about the story was how logical the main narrative unraveled. It doesn't rely on plot convenience, and there is a discernible sense of cause and effect. There are no easy outs, no ass pulls or other conveniences to help the characters avoid their outcome, desirable or not. It's ironic that the story in a magical girl genre involving wish fulfillment no less, exercises more restraint, logic, and definition of its characters' abilities than most shows in other genres where these things should be more defined. And this is why I like the series when it comes down to it. It wasn't sad for the sake of being sad, or happy for the sake of pleasing the audience. To summarize, Madoka Magica is a series where the tragedy and sadness lies in the concepts, and the execution of the narrative is performed competently enough to allow at least myself as a viewer to appreciate it. I like the series and would definitely recommend it, as a tragedy or a drama depending on your viewpoint, and an example of just good storytelling.